You see, one of the strangest assumptions we carry in our culture is this. You imagine yourself as a tiny manager, seated somewhere behind the eyes, between the ears, with a great switchboard of levers and buttons. You sit there, so you think, pulling the levers of thought, issuing commands to the body, deciding what to say, what to do, where to go, and yet look closely and you'll see it's rather odd, because this manager never applied for the job. You never sat in some cosmic waiting room, filled out an application and said, yes, I'll take this body, these parents, this language, this culture. No, all of that was given. Before you ever showed up, the world was already spinning, breath was already moving in and out, the heart was already beating without your permission. And yet the story persists. Here you are, this little inner executive, tasked with running a universe you did not design. Now, once you buy into this fantasy, the trouble begins. Because the manager must manage, the pilot must steer. And so you feel, I am in here and the world is out there. Nature becomes your environment, a thing to be controlled, adjusted, fenced off. Other people become competitors or obstacles, sometimes allies, but always others. The world becomes a battlefield in which the fragile bubble of me must push and pull and strategize. And from this sense of separation arises tension. A self, imagined to be apart from the flow, tries to control a world it imagines it is not part of. But isn't that absurd? Like a wave on the ocean trying to manage the tides. Now, once the self has been cast in this role of manager, it is immediately anxious, because the manager has an impossible task to guarantee outcomes in a world that refuses to be guaranteed. And so we invent this endless game of control. We try to secure tomorrow, to nail down the future, to outwit death. We buy insurance policies, retirement plans, vitamin supplements, security systems, self-help books. All of it in the hope that if we plan well enough, we can finally rest easy. But have you noticed? It doesn't work. Every attempt to guarantee outcomes produces more uncertainty. The more you try to control, the more you realize how little control you have. It's like trying to smooth water with an iron. The harder you press, the more ripples you make. Or like standing up in a hammock. The more desperately you balance, the wobblier it becomes. So life, under the reign of the anxious manager, becomes an endless insurance policy against failure, aging, and death. We move through our days not living, but hedging, not trusting, but checking. And yet the paradox is this. The more we try to secure ourselves, the more insecure we feel. Because the one who is doing the securing is precisely the phantom who cannot be secured. The I, the little manager in the head, has no substance. It's a grammatical trick, a story told by thought. And so no matter how much it tries to control, it always ends up chasing its own tail. Now, in our age, this urge to control has taken on new toys. We carry around little rectangles in our pockets, boxes of glass and metal that promise mastery. Open the weather app and you think, I know what the sky will do. Strap on a health tracker and you think, now my body is under surveillance. Check your bank account with its neat little graphs and you think, now my future is secure. But have you noticed how the gadgets never quite deliver what they promise? The forecast says sunshine and then it rains. The health tracker tells you that you slept well, but you feel exhausted. The financial algorithm predicts growth, and the market crashes anyway. And so, instead of resting in trust, we are more jittery than ever. Because every new device extends the domain of control, and with it, the domain of anxiety. We behave as if reality itself should bend to our predictions, as if life were a spreadsheet to be balanced, an equation to be solved. And yet life, with her infinite mischief, will not be boxed in. The universe is not a factory producing predictable outputs. It is more like a cat than a clock. You may coax it, you may play with it, but it will not obey commands. Try to pin it down, and it will wriggle out, scratch you, or simply walk away with its tail in the air. And this is what we are slow to learn, that life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be enjoyed. So where does this leave us? Well, look closely, and you will not find the little manager in the head. Search through thought, and you will find only thoughts spontaneous, bubbling, uninvited. Search through sensation, and you will find only vibrations, tinglings, warmth, movement. But the boss, the pilot, the one pulling the levers, that is nowhere to be found. It is a phantom, a superstition. And when this illusion collapses, the tension between self and world dissolves. Life is no longer a war to be won, but a song to be sung. Imagine the relief of no longer needing to control the waves, because you realize you are the ocean. Imagine the freedom of no longer trying to cling to the passing moment, because you realize the moment is you. This does not mean passivity, it does not mean laziness, quite the opposite. When you recognize that you are not separate from the world, you act with the effortless grace of nature itself. A tree does not strain to grow, it simply unfolds. The sun does not force itself to shine, it simply radiates. And so you, when freed from the illusion of separateness, do not struggle to live. You are living. The ancient Taoists had a phrase, Wu Wei. It is usually translated as non-doing, but that's misleading. It doesn't mean sitting idly by, doing absolutely nothing, watching the paint peel. No Wu Wei is closer to effortless action or non-forcing. It is the art of moving with the grain of the universe rather than against it. Imagine a river flowing. When the water encounters a rock, does it stop and complain? Does it try to smash the rock out of the way? No, the river flows around it. Patient, supple, persistent, and in time the rock itself is worn smooth. Or picture a tree in the wind. The rigid branch snaps, the supple branch bends, it yields, and in yielding it survives. This is Wu Wei. Not passivity, not weakness, but attunement. It is the recognition that life itself is intelligent, and that our task is not to conquer it, but to harmonize with it. Now, this is very different from the way we're trained in modern life. We're taught to grit our teeth, to push harder, to wrestle outcomes into submission. Make it happen, we say. Take control. But have you noticed, the more you push, the more resistance you meet. Forcing life is like trying to push a rope. The harder you shove, the more it collapses in your hands. Wu Wei invites another way, not pushing the rope, but pulling it gently, not commanding the river, but joining its current, not fighting the wind, but sailing with it. You may ask, but if I stop forcing, won't everything fall apart? On the contrary, look around. The whole universe is moving in perfect order without your constant management. The planets wheel through the void, the seasons turn, your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your stomach digests. You are not commanding any of this. When you walk, do you consciously calculate the precise angle of each joint? When you speak, do you deliberately select every phoneme? No, it happens of itself, spontaneously, naturally. And this is the great discovery of Taoism, that the way things happen when you don't interfere is often far more intelligent than when you try to micromanage. It is like the difference between a dancer who moves freely and one who is overthinking every step. The first flows with grace. The second stumbles. Nowhere is this clearer than in the difference between play and work. Have you noticed how children play? They don't try to play. They don't schedule play into a calendar, put it on a to-do list, and grit their teeth to make it fun. No, they simply play, effortlessly, naturally, without motive. And what do adults say? Stop playing around and get to work. But what if life itself is more like play than like work? Think of music. The point of a song is not to get to the end. If that were the case, the best musicians would simply play the final chord and walk off the stage. The point is the unfolding, the dancing, the improvisation along the way. Or think of dance itself. You don't dance to arrive at a particular spot on the floor. You dance for the joy of moving. So too with life. Its value is not in some grand conclusion, some ultimate goal, but in the playing itself. And yet, how often do we treat life as a chore? We drag ourselves through tasks, through schedules, through obligations, as if the only point were to reach some destination. Retirement, success, heaven, enlightenment. But what if the destination is not the point? What if the point is the dance? We take ourselves so terribly seriously, as if the whole fate of the cosmos depended on whether we meet the deadline, get the promotion, maintain the image. And so life, which could be a dance, becomes a grim march. But the universe, you see, is playful. Look at the patterns of a snowflake, the colors of a sunset, the songs of birds. They are not utilitarian. They are ornaments. flourishes, expressions of joy. The cosmos is extravagant. It produces billions of galaxies, not because it must, but because it can. So why should you imagine that your role in it is drudgery? Why should you assume that existence puts you here as a worker on the cosmic assembly line? Far more likely, you are here to play. Now, this requires trust, because to let go of forcing, to let life be play, you must recognize that you are not in charge of the larger process. But notice, you never were. You are not managing the circulation of your blood. You are not commanding the growth of your hair. You are not orchestrating the firing of your neurons. All of this is happening of itself. You are being breathed more than you are breathing. And what is true in the body is true in the cosmos. The galaxies spin without a manager. The tides rise and fall without a committee. The sun burns without an engineer. So why imagine that your little executive self must hold it all together? You are part of this larger spontaneity. You are not separate from it, not alien to it, not an intruder in it. You are it, expressing itself in human form. When you realize this, you can let go of the anxious need to control. You can relax into the flow. And then action arises not forced, not strained, but natural, like the growth of a plant, like the flight of a bird, like the laughter of a child. Letting go is not resignation. It is not passivity. It is joy. It is the joy of realizing that the burden you have been carrying, the burden of being the manager of the universe, was never yours to carry. It is the relief of laying down the armor, of setting aside the checklist, of no longer needing to be the one in charge. Now, to the mind, trained in straight lines and logic, this sounds maddening. How can I get control? By letting go of control. But this is the trick of the Tao. The world does not move in straight lines. It moves in spirals, in circles, in paradoxes. It is the freedom of dancing without needing to know every step in advance. And in that freedom, you discover a deeper wisdom, a wisdom that does not come from calculation, from prediction, from control, but from attunement, from harmony, from trust. This is Wu Wei. This is the art of effortless action. This is the wisdom of letting go. One of the oldest jokes in the spiritual world is this: you only have control when you stop clutching for it. It is like trying to hold water in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips between your fingers. But if you cup your palm loosely, the water rests there easily. And so we live in this peculiar paradox. We strive, we fight, we grasp only to find the thing we wanted running away. And yet, when we relax, when we release, when we stop insisting, it comes of its own accord. Have you noticed this in your own life? You fall asleep fastest when you stop trying to fall asleep. You remember the name you forgot only when you stop forcing yourself to recall it. You make the best impression on others not when you're desperate to impress, but when you're at ease, unself-conscious, natural. This is the paradox of control. You get it only when you no longer clutch at it. The seed becomes the tree becomes the seed. The inhale becomes the exhale becomes the inhale. Life is a rhythm, not a mechanism. And so the very thing you seek comes only when you stop seeking it. And here we come to another paradox, that true stability is found not in fixing life, but in flowing with its uncertainty. Consider a raft on a river. The raft that is rigid, stiff, unyielding will crack against the rocks. But the raft that is buoyant, flexible, alive, it adapts to every wave. It does not resist the current, it rides it. In the same way, security is not achieved by building walls high enough to keep out change. Security comes from learning to move with change, to trust the current, to be buoyant. But in our culture, we imagine that security means permanence. We want jobs that will last forever, relationships that will never change, health that will never falter. We build houses of stone, we write contracts, we sign policies. And yet, the more we try to freeze life into permanence, the more brittle it becomes. For permanence is not in the nature of things. The mountain crumbles, the star burns out, the body ages. To demand permanence from a world that flows is like demanding that the tide hold still. And so, oddly enough, real security is found in insecurity. Real stability is found in movement. Real peace is found in change. Like a surfer balancing on the wave. His security is not in stopping the ocean, but in moving with it. His stability is not in holding still, but in constant adjustment, in flexibility, in play. So too with us. The person who adapts, who bends, who trusts, is far safer than the one who clings to rigid control. But beneath all of this, the clutching, the grasping, the desperate attempt to nail life down, lurks one final fear, the fear of death. For what is death but the ultimate letting go? The moment when all the strategies, all the insurances, all the careful plans fall useless. The moment when the little manager in the head must surrender his post. And because we have been trained to think of ourselves as this separate self, this little ghost in the machine, we imagine that death is the end of everything. We picture darkness, oblivion, nothingness. And so we recoil. But notice this fear is built on the same illusion we spoke of earlier, the illusion of separateness. If you imagine yourself as an isolated bubble of consciousness, then of course death seems like annihilation. But if you see yourself as inseparable from the larger flow, then death is not the end. It is simply the next movement in the rhythm. Look at the seasons. Summer dies into autumn, autumn into winter, winter into spring. Each ending is a beginning. The leaf falls, and in its falling nourishes the soil from which new life will grow. Look at your own body. Every cell is dying and being replaced. The you of today is not the you of 10 years ago. And yet here you are, continuous in the flow of change. So why imagine that death, the great death, is any different? To die is to join the great rhythm we were never apart from. It is the inhale returning to the exhale. It is the wave subsiding into the sea. It is the drop falling back into the ocean. And when we see it this way, death is not a terror but a release. Not a failure, but a homecoming. Now think about this. It is precisely because we die that we truly live. Imagine if life were endless, unchanging, infinite in duration. Would you treasure a sunrise if there were an infinite number of them waiting for you? Would you savor a kiss if you knew you could repeat it endlessly? It is the fragility, the fleetingness that makes things precious. The cherry blossom is beautiful because it falls. The song is moving because it ends. The play is meaningful because the curtain comes down. So too with our lives. Death is not the enemy of life, but its companion, its twin. Death is what gives life its poignancy, its urgency, its vibrancy. Without death, life would be flat, monotonous, endless. With death, life is vivid, burning, immediate. And so, when you accept death, you discover life more vividly. When you stop clinging to tomorrow, you can enter today. When you stop fearing the end, you can dance in the middle. You realize that you have never grasped a single moment, nor will you. Life is always passing, always flowing, always moving. And yet, in that movement, it is complete. Each note of the song is complete in itself. Each wave of the sea is perfect in itself. So too with each moment of your life. It does not need to last forever to be whole. And when you see this, you can live freely. You can love without fear of loss, because you know that loss is part of love. You can risk without fear of failure, because you know that failure is part of play. You can breathe deeply, laugh loudly, dance wildly, because you are not trying to preserve the moment, but to participate in it. Imagine if life were endless, unchanging, infinite in duration. Would you treasure a sunrise if there were an infinite number of them waiting for you? Would you savor a kiss if you knew you could repeat it endlessly? It is the fragility, the fleetingness that makes things precious. The cherry blossom is beautiful because it falls. The song is moving because it ends. The play is meaningful because the curtain comes down. So too with our lives. Death is not the enemy of life, but its companion, its twin. Death is what gives life its poignancy, its urgency, its vibrancy. Without death, life would be flat, monotonous, endless. With death, life is vivid, burning, immediate. So here, at last, is the final paradox. You secure your life not by holding on to it, but by letting it go. You conquer death not by defeating it, but by accepting it. You find permanence not by clinging, but by flowing. The wave rises, the wave falls. The inhale comes, the exhale goes. The seed grows, the flower blooms, the flower fades. And you are not apart from this rhythm. You are the rhythm. You are the dance. You are the song. So let go. Let go of control, let go of security, let go of the fear of death. And in that letting go, you will discover the great freedom, the great peace, the great laughter of existence itself. For the truth is plain. You are not a fragment struggling against the universe. You are the universe, playing at fragments, dancing as waves, singing as lives, laughing as death, and beginning again forever and ever. We began with the illusion of separateness, the little me inside the head, trying to boss around the universe like a tiny manager of infinity. We wandered through the anxiety of control, the endless insurance policy against the unpredictable flow of life. We looked at our technologies, our clever gadgets, our futile attempts to bend reality to forecasts and predictions. Then we turned a corner into the wisdom of letting go. Wu Wei, the art of non-forcing, the playfulness of life, the music of being, the trust in the larger process that already breathes your lungs and spins the galaxies without your supervision. And then into paradox, discovering that the tighter you hold, the more you lose. That real stability is buoyancy. That death itself, the thing most feared, is not an intruder but the great liberator, the punctuation that gives meaning to the sentence of life. Now we arrive here at the great return. Not a new teaching, not another trick, but a recognition, a remembering that what you sought was never elsewhere, that the journey of seeking ends in the place it began, here. We Westerners like to think in lines: progress, growth, forward motion, from here to there, from worse to better, from ignorance to enlightenment. But life, as the Taoists remind us, moves in circles. The seasons turn, the moon waxes and wanes, the tides rise and fall. Birth, growth, decay, death, and then birth again. Not a straight road, but a wheel. Not a destination, but a rhythm. And so the spiritual journey is not really a journey at all. It is more like a dance. You don't dance in order to arrive at a particular spot on the floor. You dance to dance. You don't sing in order to finish the song. You sing because singing itself is the joy. The end of seeking is not an arrival in some far-off paradise, but the realization that you were never apart from it. The wheel turns, and you find yourself back at the beginning. Only now you see it differently. Now you see the sacred in what once looked ordinary. Take a breath. Notice it. You did not make it happen. It came out of nowhere. It fills you, and then it leaves. A little death, a little birth, all in the space of a moment. What could be more ordinary than breathing? And yet, what could be more miraculous? Air, invisible, entering your lungs, keeping you alive without your command. Or look at your hand. The way it moves, flexes, touches, you are not pulling strings. You do not consciously contract each muscle fiber. It simply happens. A gesture of unimaginable complexity, arising without effort. We overlook this because it is constant. But to wake up is to see it. The extraordinary hiding in the ordinary, the sacred hiding in the familiar. The mystics were not pointing to some distant heaven. They were pointing here to your breath, your body, the trees outside your window, the laughter of a friend, the sound of rain on the roof. When the illusion of control dissolves, when the fear of death softens, what remains is this, the ordinary miracle of now. And here is where the laughter comes in. For what a joke it is that you spent so much effort trying to get there, only to find there was no there. That you labored so hard to be secure, only to find the security you sought was in insecurity itself. That you feared death, only to find death was not an ending, but the rhythm that makes life possible. It is the cosmic hide-and-seek game. The universe hides itself as you, pretending to be a worried little manager, a seeker on a path, a separate self lost in a dangerous world. And then, peekaboo, it reveals that you were the dance all along. Now you may ask, what does this mean for my daily life? How do I live the return? The answer is, you already do. There is no new task to complete, no enlightenment to achieve. There is only recognition. But if we were to put it into gestures, it might look like this. Relax the grip. When you notice yourself clutching at plans, at identities, at fears, soften, loosen, breathe. Let the water flow. Play. Treat life not as a problem, but as a game. Experiment, dance, sing, explore. Don't always demand a purpose. Let things be for their own sake. Trust the process. Your body, the earth, the cosmos, they are already moving with an intelligence far beyond your plans. Trust it. Welcome death, not morbidly, but tenderly. Remember that endings give life its sweetness. Let mortality be your teacher. See the ordinary as holy. Every cup of tea, every conversation, every breath is the miracle. Wake to it. This is why so many sages end up chuckling. Not because they've found some solemn truth to cling to, but because they've seen through the whole game. They've seen that the problem was never there, that the seeker was the sought, that the self you tried so hard to defend was never separate to begin with. And so they laugh. And you laugh with them. The tension breaks, the seriousness melts, and what remains is play. Now you may ask, what does this mean for my daily life? How do I live the return? The answer is, you already do. There is no new task to complete, no enlightenment to achieve. There is only recognition. But if we were to put it into gestures, it might look like this. Relax the grip. When you notice yourself clutching at plans, at identities, at fears, soften, loosen, breathe, let the water flow. Play. Treat life not as a problem, but as a game. Experiment, dance, sing, explore. Don't always demand a purpose. Let things be for their own sake. Trust the process. Your body, the earth, the cosmos, they are already moving with an intelligence far beyond your plans. Trust it. Welcome death, not morbidly, but tenderly. Remember that endings give life its sweetness. Let mortality be your teacher. See the ordinary as holy. Every cup of tea, every conversation, every breath is the miracle. Wake to it. This is not a discipline, not a duty. It is a delight, a remembering, a return. And so we come full circle. The illusion of separateness dissolves into the recognition of unity. The anxiety of control softens into the trust of surrender. The paradox of insecurity reveals itself as security. And death, the feared enemy, is embraced as the final teacher. But this is not an ending. It is a beginning. The wheel turns again. You return to your life, to your relationships, your work, your play. Only now you see with fresh eyes. The same world, but a different vision. The same dance, but a new rhythm. The same you, but no longer a separate self. And perhaps you find yourself laughing at the cosmic joke, laughing at the game you played, laughing not because you've escaped life, but because you've finally joined it. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting by a river. The water moves, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. It ripples, it swirls, it eddies. You cannot stop it, you cannot control it. And yet, you are not apart from it. You are breathing the same air, feeling the same rhythm. You are the river in human form, watching itself flow. And in that moment, you smile. For there is nothing to fear, nothing to clutch, nothing to fix, only the flow, the dance, the song. The river goes on, and so do you.